Let us begin, though, with some breaking news on a serious subject. Two American journalists convicted and sentenced to 12 years behind bars in North Korea. NBC's chief foreign affairs correspondent Andrea Mitchell has the latest overnight developments. Andrea, take it away. Good morning to you.
Well, good morning, Matt. As you've said, the White House now says the president is deeply concerned about the conviction of these journalists and that the United States is doing everything possible through diplomatic channels to secure their release. But, of course, the U.S. has no diplomatic relations with Pyongyang and has been sending messages through the Swedish ambassador who represents U.S. interests there. U.S. officials believe the North is trying to use these women as bargaining chips in ongoing negotiations with the West and in efforts perhaps to get more aid from the West. Over the weekend, Hillary Clinton emphasized that this is a humanitarian issue. She's trying to keep it separate, Matt, from the more difficult political and security disagreements with the North, which are unlikely to be resolved anytime soon. This is also probably wrapped up in a struggle for succession to ailing leader Kim Jong-il. Only last week, the secretive regime let its outposts be known that the designated successor to Kim is his youngest son, Kim Jong-un, which could be an indication that the military there is really in charge. Secretary Clinton also indicated that the U.S. is trying to get Allied support to board North Korean ships and intercept any illegal nuclear or missile cargo. That's a serious threat, and is close to an agreement on tough new financial sanctions at the United Nations. In the past, as you know, China and Russia have blocked tougher action by the UN. There has been talk of sending an envoy to the North, possibly, of course, Bill Richardson, you're going to talk to him in a moment, possibly Al Gore, who leads Current TV, the organization for whom the two journalists were working. There's some hope that now that the Korean court has convicted the women, the North could be open to releasing them. But of course, as you've pointed out, there is no appeal from this high court, so all rests on back-channel diplomacy. Matt?
All right, Andrea Mitchell in Washington for us this morning. As always, Andrea, thank you very much. And with more on the story, here's Aaron.
Matt, thanks. And New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson helped negotiate the release of two Americans from North Korea back in the 1990s. Governor Richardson, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Is the sentence that we have heard about here, the 12 years, harsher than expected?
Well, it is harsher than expected. The North Koreans are raising the stakes. This is a high-stakes poker game. But in the sense that the sentence is harsh, and I feel deeply for the families of these women, it means that the legal process of the North Koreans has ended. That's good, because in previous instances where I was involved in negotiating releases, you couldn't even start until the legal process had ended. Now, the good news also in this bad sentence is that there is no charge of espionage, it appears. It appears that the charge is illegal crossing, hostile acts. But the good news, I believe, is that now diplomacy and negotiation for the humanitarian release can begin. And I believe the administration has been walking a very good line in separating the disagreements over nuclear policy, over the six-party talks, over testing, and the humanitarian release of these two women.
The president says he's deeply concerned. That's what we're hearing this morning. And obviously there's talk that you and potentially Al Gore could be part of an envoy here to try to negotiate the release. Is that something you've talked to the administration about?
Well, the administration has reached out to me for advice. I've talked to the families. Talk of an envoy is premature, because what first has to happen is a framework for negotiations on a potential humanitarian release. What we would try to seek would be some kind of a political pardon, some kind of a respite from the legal proceedings. But now the North Koreans, they have to be part of that too, and they have to accept that kind of discussion. The good news, though, also is that the North Koreans also seem to have been separating this issue from the political differences. They've allowed, for instance, the Swedish ambassador in 3 times to see the two women. They've allowed phone calls from the two women to their families in the United States. Their rhetoric has been relatively muted in terms of criticizing the two women. So it looks like, despite this deep concern, and I agree with President Obama, we should be very concerned, because these young women were just doing their jobs, they're journalists, and it is a very harsh sentence. Now a legal process ends and political negotiations can begin.
All right, well, Governor Richardson, thanks so much. We appreciate your taking the time.
Thank you.